In this lesson, we are going to initialize our Firestore database, get a tour of the web interface, and take a look at how we can create collections and documents right here in the console. So head on over to your Firebase project console and go to the database tab on the left right here. And you will see that the recommended option is Firestore. We got a big old banner up here. For new projects, Google actually recommends starting with Firestore. But if you scroll down and you still want to use the real-time database, you can do so right here. All right, so let's go ahead and initialize this bad boy. Let's say create database. And you'll see this pop up. It says security rules for Cloud Firestore. And you have two options: start in locked mode, which makes your database private by denying all reads and writes. Or we can start in test mode, in which this allows all reads and writes to your database. We're going to start in test mode. Later on in the section, we're going to come back to our security rules and lock it down for only authorized users. Okay, so let's go ahead and say enable. And welcome to your brand new Firestore database. It says here your database is ready to go, just add data. And we're going to do that, but first we're going to take a look at these other tabs up here real quick. We have the rules here, which we briefly looked at, but basically what's happening here is that we are saying we are allowing any read and write operations for our database. This means that anyone that knows our database ID and the path to our documents would be able to read and write. Obviously, that's not a good security implementation, but we'll come back to this later. This just makes it easy to get started while we're under development. Next up here, we have indexes. And we'll talk more about this later, but basically the way that Firestore works with queries, sometimes you have to build custom queries and have them be indexed before you're able to use them. And then finally we have our usage tab here. And this shows the usage for reads, writes, and deletes. All right, so on the free plan, you have a certain quota, all right? So we are allotted 50,000 reads, 20,000 writes, and 20,000 deletes. While we're here talking about this, let's go ahead and open a new tab, do a search for Firestore billing. All right, and let's click on this one right here. And actually I want to go to usage and limits right here. All right, so here we have what shows the free quota. All right, so this is what you'll probably be starting on. The free plan is, in my opinion, extremely generous. It allots you 50,000 reads per day, 20,000 writes per day, 20,000 deletes per day. And then all of the other details are in here. Let's see here. So for instance, one thing that's important to know is that the maximum size for a document is 1 megabyte. And that's actually quite a bit because you can't store images or files in a document. This is all just key value pairs. So this is just text, okay? So you can store quite a bit of data in a document with 1 megabyte. Let's see what else we have here. We have writes and transactions, real-time updates. So you can only have a maximum concurrent connections of 1 million. So unless your app just explodes in popularity, the free plan will most likely be plenty for you. And if you do need to move up, then that's a good problem to have. That means you have tons of users and activity, in which case you may need to upgrade to either the Blaze or paid plan. The Blaze plan is pay as you go, in which case we have here the pricing beyond the free quota. So document reads is just 6 cents per 100,000 documents, okay? 18 cents per 100,000 document writes, and 2 cents per 100,000 document deletes. So not super expensive at all. So like I said, I think this is a very generous free plan, and even if you exceed the free quota, it's not that expensive. All right, let's get back to our database. All right, come on over here to our data tab again. And here we have our database. We have our project ID right here, and here is the root of our database. Nothing here yet, so let's create our very first collection just by clicking right here, Add Collection. Now, if you recall, a collection is a container for all of our documents that contain the actual data. Collections themselves don't contain any data. We're just going to put a name here. And in our Artable app, we are working with products and categories. Those are the two kind of collections that we've talked about so far. So I'm going to do a collection for categories and say next. And now it's going to prompt us to add our first document. And you'll see here, document ID, okay? So this is the unique identifier for this document. And we can manually input a document ID, or we can click here and have Cloud Firestore generate a unique ID for this document. You'll usually be using the auto ID. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that it has created a random string identifier for this document. Now we have our field and type and value. Remember, we talked about this. This is kind of like a key value pair, a dictionary in Swift, only in this case, they call the key a field. And then we have our types, and we talked about this in the previous lesson, how the fields support various types. We have string, number. Numbers are always stored as doubles in Firestore. Booleans, a map, arrays, null, timestamp, geopoint, and references. All right, so we're going to start out with a string here. Let's open up Xcode real quick and take a look at our category model. We have name, ID, image URL, is active, and timestamp. So let's go ahead and add those fields to our new category document. So we're going to say name, and we'll create a value here. This is going to be, let's say, we already have a nature category. So let's do, say, portraits. Oops, if I can spell that right, portraits. And then we're going to say add field. Next up, we have the ID. So I'm going to say ID. And this is the same as the document ID right here. So I'm going to copy this and paste it there. I'm going to add another field. This is the image URL. This is also a string. And let's go ahead and grab a portrait from Unsplash. Just going to do search for portrait. And I'll just grab this one right here, right click and say copy image address. Then come back to our database and paste that. Add field. This is our is active field. And this is a Boolean. So I'm going to set that to be true to start out with. And then finally our timestamp. So I'm going to say timestamp and change its type to timestamp. And when you select this, you also need to enter a date. I'm just going to go ahead and put in today's date. And then for the time, you don't have to put anything. That's fine. And we will say save now. All right, very good. So now we see our collection. And inside of that collection, we have a pane that shows all of the documents, all right? So as we add more documents, you're gonna see more listed out right here. Once you click on a document, you'll see its fields show up over here. And you can click and add fields. You can click and add collections. Remember that we talked about how documents can have their own collections. So for instance, we could click here and add our products collection as well. I'm not going to do that quite yet in this video because we're actually going to have the products be another root category. And we'll talk about the why for that in a future video. So yeah, there you have it. In this video, we created our Firestore database. We talked about the pricing and quotas for the free plan and moving upwards from there. We have taken a look at the security rules, indexes, usage, and finally, we created our very first collection and document and kind of took a look at how we can add those right here in the console, how to add fields to our document, what the different types are. And in the next lesson, we are going to learn how to actually pull down this document and display it in our app. Okay, and one thing that I do want to make clear is that we are starting out manually creating the data right here in the console. But in the future, all document creation will be done in our app via code. Okay, this is just to kind of show how you can do this and get us started with some data that we can pull down into our app. All right, so I will see you in the next one.